Canada is a top destination for global investors. But behind the headlines, the numbers tell a different story. Billions flow in every year, yet billions are lost to red tape and compliance. So is Canada a business paradise or a regulatory maze?
All right, let's get right into it. When you look at Canada from the outside on the world stage, it seems like an absolute dream for investors. But if you talk to a small business owner on Main Street, you might hear a totally different story. So what's the real deal? Is it a business paradise or is it a regulatory maze? Let's break it all down.
Okay, first up, the global view. Check this out. For the third year in a row, Canada is ranked as the second most attractive country in the entire world for foreign direct investment. This is according to the Kearney FDI Confidence Index for 2025. The only country ahead of us? The United States. That's a massive vote of confidence from investors all over the globe. So, what's the secret sauce here? Well, it's this really powerful mix of things. First, Canada's economy is rock solid. We've got the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the whole G7. And it's not just about stability. We literally have the most educated workforce in the entire OECD. Then you add in this booming tech scene, which is fueled by some great R&D incentives, and you top it all off with free trade access to 1.5 billion consumers. I mean, it's an incredibly compelling pitch.
But as amazing as that picture is, it doesn't quite capture the day-to-day reality for a lot of the businesses that are already here, trying to make things work.
And this quote from a small business owner out in British Columbia, wow, it just gets right to the heart of the problem. They said, "The red tape has become so overwhelming that I felt compelled to hire a professional bookkeeper to allow me to dedicate more attention to serving our customers." Think about that. Instead of focusing on their customers, on growth, they're just getting bogged down. And that brings us to the whole other side of this coin, red tape.
So, let's talk about the cost of all this red tape. This is the story you are definitely not going to see in those shiny global investment reports.
Now, let's be super clear. We are not talking about all regulations. Good rules are essential, right? They protect public health, they make sure markets are fair. Red tape is the other stuff. It's the excessive, the poorly designed, the contradictory rules that just waste time and money for no good reason. A rule that says a restaurant has to keep its kitchen clean, that's a good regulation. A rule that says they have to file the exact same form in triplicate to 3 different agencies, yeah, that's red tape.
And what's the price tag for all that nonsense? Well, according to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, red tape costs Canadian businesses a truly staggering $17.9 billion. And that's not a one-time thing, that's every single year.
And it's not just about the money, it's about time. The average business in Canada spends 735 hours a year just on regulatory compliance. Let that sink in. That's the same as 92 8-hour workdays. It's like having a full-time employee who does nothing but navigate rules for almost 4 months of the year.
And then there's the human cost, which might be the most important part. Beyond the dollars, beyond the hours, this is a serious impact on people's well-being. A full 90% of small business owners say that excessive government regulations add significant stress to their lives. That is just an absolutely overwhelming majority.
So, how can this painful reality exist at the same time as Canada's stellar global reputation? Well, it turns out the burden of all this regulation isn't shared equally at all. It's really a tale of two completely different businesses. Just look at this disparity. It is wild. For a tiny business, we're talking fewer than 5 employees. The cost of regulation is over $10,000 per employee. Now, look at a big company with over 100 employees. That number drops all the way down to just over $1,300. So the burden on the smallest players is almost 8 times higher.
And the why here is really the key. In a small business, it's often the owner themselves who has to handle all the compliance paperwork. That's time they're not spending on growing their business or helping customers. They just don't have a whole department for this stuff. A large corporation, on the other hand, they've got teams of lawyers and accountants. They can just absorb these costs and manage compliance as a normal part of their operations. Now, this tricky regulatory environment doesn't just impact the businesses we have now. It also seems to affect our ability to really use one of our biggest assets, that super highly educated workforce we talked about earlier. And this is where we get into a kind of paradox.
So, Canada is amazing at attracting top talent from all over the world, especially skilled immigrants. But what happens once they actually get here and try to join the workforce? Well, the answer gets a little complicated.
A study from the Fraser Institute found a pretty startling gap. In Canada, highly educated immigrants actually have an employment rate that's 9.5% lower than their native-born counterparts, and they earn 16% less. Now compare that to the United States. Down there, skilled immigrants have a slightly higher rate of employment and earn 8% more. Now, this study doesn't say exactly why this is, but it does make you wonder if some of the same regulatory hurdles that trip up small businesses also create barriers for skilled newcomers who are just trying to get their credentials recognized and find a good job.
So all of this really points to a massive balancing act. How can Canada support its own domestic businesses and workers, while at the same time staying this top destination for foreign capital? Let's take a look at the policy and what could maybe be done.
Officially, the government's policy, which is guided by the Investment Canada Act, is to do exactly that. Encourage investment that's good for the economy while also protecting our national security. And this framework is a big part of what helps create that positive story for foreign investors. But on the ground, here at home, there is a major confidence gap. Just look at these numbers. Only 6% of business owners are confident that the federal government is actually committed to reducing red tape. 6%! And the numbers for provincial and municipal governments aren't a whole lot better. This shows a huge disconnect between the policy goals and what entrepreneurs are actually experiencing.
So, what's the solution? Well, it turns out business owners have some very clear, very practical ideas. They're not asking for the moon here. They want regulations written in plain, simple language. They want a reduction in the sheer volume of rules. They want better customer service from government agencies. And they want faster decisions on things like permits and licenses. Seems pretty reasonable, right?
And that leaves us with the big question at the end of the day. It's pretty clear that Canada is living two parallel stories right now. One is a story of global success, and the other is a story of domestic struggle. The real challenge then is this. Can Canada cut the tape for all those small businesses on Main Street without losing its powerful shine on the world stage? Finding that balance? Well, that's what's going to define the future of the Canadian economy.
And that's the question every Canadian investor needs to ask. The data is clear. Number 2 for foreign investment. But $17.9 billion lost to red tape. Two parallel realities in one economy. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for daily deep dives on economic data and investment insights for Canadians. Keep your capital smart and your wealth growing.